The marble of the tomb of the unknown soldier gleamed under the cold moonlight, a stark, pale island in a sea of darkness. Sergeant Elijah Ward's polished shoes clicked against the stone in a rhythm as sacred as a heartbeat. Click, click, click. 21 steps north. A precise, silent turn. 21 steps south. For 8 years, this ritual had been his life, his breath, his prayer. It was a living tribute to the ultimate sacrifice of those known only to God. A promise etched not just in stone, but in his very soul. The spring air carried a chill that seeped through the thick wool of his uniform, but Elijah welcomed it. It kept him sharp, focused. Arlington National Cemetery stretched before him, an endless, silent city of white headstones, each catching the silvery light, each a story of a life given. His eyes, hidden behind the trademark sunglasses he wore even at night, scanned the familiar paths. He thought of his friend, James, his battle buddy from Basic, who now rested somewhere among those endless rows. The memory was a familiar ache, a tightening in his throat that he willed away, his face remaining a stoic mask. This watch was for James. It was for all of them. The sound, when it came, was a physical violation. Drunken laughter, raw and careless, echoed between the headstones, followed by the clumsy scuff of expensive shoes on hallowed ground. Elijah's senses, already attuned to the slightest change in the night, sharpened to a razor's edge. His steps never faltered. Click, click, click. 3 figures stumbled into the plaza. Even in the dim light, their entitlement was a visible aura. Designer jackets, perfectly distressed jeans, the glint of a gold watch. "Check it out," Carter called out, his voice too loud, raising a beer can in a mock salute. "It's like a real-life toy soldier." His friends, Dylan and Mason, snickered. Dylan immediately held up his phone, the screen's blue light a profane intrusion. "This is going on my story." Caption, "Most boring job ever." Mason, broad-shouldered and swaying, attempted an exaggerated, clumsy march. "Look at me, I'm a fancy guard." He stumbled, laughing as an empty can clattered across the sacred stones. The sound echoed in the silence, a jarring, wrong note. Elijah's jaw clenched so tight his teeth ached, but his discipline was a cage around his anger. 21 steps. Turn. Face east for 21 seconds. Their reflections shimmered in the polished marble beside his own, their loose, arrogant postures a stark contrast to his rigid devotion. "Do you think he's even real?" Carter peered at Elijah as if he were an exhibit. "Hey man, you can drop the act. Nobody's here but us." Dylan stepped directly into his path, forcing a minute adjustment in his route. It felt like a personal failure. "Watch this," Mason called out. He crushed his can and tossed it. It spun through the air before clattering against the base of the tomb. 10 points. Then Carter produced it, a can of spray paint. The hiss of the aerosol was like a gunshot in the silent night. Neon orange paint splashed across the pristine white marble, a violent scar against the solemn inscription. "Here rests, in honored glory, an American soldier known but to God." Something primal and protective shattered inside Elijah. The sacred rhythm dissolved. He broke formation, his boots striking the stone with a new, terrible purpose. "Stop immediately," he commanded, his voice low and laced with authority that made the boys flinch. Carter turned around, surprise morphing into a sneer. "Oh look, the robot speaks." He tossed the can to Dylan. "What's wrong, toy soldier? Don't like our art?" "This is hallowed ground," Elijah stated, each word precise and cold. Mason mimicked him, swaying. "Hallowed ground. It's just a big rock, man." He stumbled closer, the stench of alcohol thick on his breath. Then he spat. The glob of saliva hit the marble with a wet, final sound, and began a slow, desecrating drip down the face of the tomb. The insult hung in the air. Then came the slur. Casual, hateful, meant to degrade. It wasn't just aimed at Elijah. It was aimed at every man and woman of color who had ever served a country that didn't always serve them back. The cage broke. Elijah's hand shot out, catching Mason square in the chest and shoving him backward. The drunk teenager landed hard on the pavement, his windmilling arms a picture of comical indignation. "You touched me," Mason screeched, his voice cracking. "He attacked me. Did you see that?" Carter's smirk was triumphant. "Oh, we saw everything," he said, his eyes on Dylan's phone. "Every single second." The reality of the trap crashed down on Elijah. He'd played right into their hands. But as he looked at the defaced marble, the spit, the laughing faces, regret was drowned by a furious, righteous certainty. The boys fled, their performance of victimhood already beginning. Elijah radioed security, who intercepted them at the gates. He meticulously documented the vandalism, sure the evidence would speak for itself. He was naively, catastrophically wrong. By the time he reached his mother's modest townhouse, the digital lynching was already underway. His phone exploded with notifications. An edited video, stripped of all context, was viral. It showed only his shove, making him look like a violent aggressor attacking unarmed, innocent teens. The headlines were brutal. Tomb Guard's violent assault on teens. The comment sections were a sewer of hatred. His commanding officer's call was a furious, one-sided torrent. "Stay put at your residence. That's an order." Then came the news vans, crowding his quiet street. Then the military police. The arrest on his front porch, the cold click of handcuffs around the wrists that had held his rifle with such reverence, was a surreal nightmare. He saw the pain in his mother's eyes, the flashing cameras, and felt his world crumbling. In a cold, sterile cell, he met Frank Delaney, a grizzled Vietnam veteran with eyes that had seen too much. "Orange isn't your color," Frank grunted, settling on the opposite bunk. "Saw you on the news. Tomb Guard. Sacred duty. Those punk kids had no business there." "You saw what happened?" "Saw enough. The edited clips are everywhere, but veterans know better. We understand what that place means." Frank leaned forward, his voice low and steady. "Listen, son, the truth always surfaces. Might take time, might get ugly first, but it comes out." But the machine of wealth and power was well-oiled and ruthless. The security footage from the cemetery was suddenly corrupted. Witness statements from other veterans who had been in the cemetery that night were lost or dismissed. The boys' powerful families, Senator Hayes, lobbyist matriarch Mrs. Brooks, and construction magnate Mr. Clark, used their influence to bury the truth under layers of legal threats and bureaucratic quicksand. Elijah's only ally emerged in the form of Sophia Morales, a tenacious investigative reporter with a quiet intensity and a bullshit detector that went off the scale. She published the first real story, piecing together testimony from Frank and others. Public support began to flicker to life. A vigil grew outside Arlington, a quiet, powerful gathering of veterans, Gold Star families, and ordinary citizens holding candles that defied the darkness. The families fought back with venom. Sophia received anonymous threats. Her editor was leaned on heavily to kill the story. Mike and Pete, the two veterans who had witnessed the event, received ominous calls, hinting their VA benefits could be reviewed. The message was clear: back off or be destroyed. The pressure was immense. Sitting in Sophia's cluttered office late one night, Elijah felt the weight of it all. "They're going after everyone who spoke up for me," he said, his voice hollow. Sophia, though fear flickered in her eyes, didn't yield. "They think they can scare us into silence like they've done before. This is their playbook." It was Frank who turned the tide.
He met Elijah at the cemetery gates at dawn, the mist clinging to his old army jacket. "Thought I might find you here," he said. Without ceremony, he pressed a USB drive into Elijah's hand. The full security footage, uncut. Got it from a buddy in security who remembers what honor means. Time to end this. In Sophia's office, they watched the unvarnished truth. There was the beer can toss, the spray paint, the vile slur, crystal clear on the audio, the spit, and only then Elijah's shove. It was all there, undeniable and damning. They published it at dawn. The effect was nuclear. The uncut footage spread across the internet like a tsunami of truth. The public outrage was immediate and absolute. Veterans groups from across the nation released statements of furious support. The story was picked up by every major network, the narrative flipping on its head. By noon, the FBI and Justice Department, armed with evidence of a hate crime and the obstruction of justice, moved in. Police cruisers descended upon the mansions of the powerful. Elijah and Sophia watched on a live news feed as Carter, Dylan, and Mason were led away in handcuffs, their faces pale and shocked, their invincibility shattered on the steps of their own homes. Their parents watched, helpless, as the empires they had built on influence and corruption began to crack and sway. The investigation spread, a wildfire finding endless fuel. Senator Hayes's backroom deals were exposed. Mrs. Brooks's lobbying firm was revealed to be a front for corruption. Mr. Clark's empire was built on stolen contracts and fraud. The attempt to bury a tomb guard had unearthed their own graves. Days later, Elijah stood in a Pentagon conference room, facing the Secretary of Defense and a panel of stern-faced generals. His dress uniform, once a symbol of his shame, now felt like armor. "Sergeant Ward," the secretary began, his voice grave, "we've reviewed the complete evidence. The manipulation of the narrative was extensive and deliberate. We owe you a profound apology." He slid a folder across the gleaming table. "Your suspension is lifted, effective immediately. You will return to your post with full honors and back pay." It was more than a reinstatement. It was a vindication. They awarded him a meritorious service medal for upholding the highest standards of duty under extreme duress. A public ceremony was arranged at the tomb for the following morning. The autumn air was crisp, the sky a brilliant blue. Thousands gathered, veterans from every conflict, Gold Star families, and ordinary citizens holding candles that defied the darkness. In the crowd, the three teens, now convicted and awaiting sentencing, were forced to watch, their heads bowed in shame, their families' reputations in ruins. At precisely 0900, a bugle call cut through the air. Elijah appeared, marching toward the tomb. His uniform was a mirror of perfection, every crease sharp, every button gleaming. His face was a mask of solemn dignity, but his heart hammered against his ribs. He found his mother in the front row, tears streaming down her proud face. Frank stood beside her, his posture ramrod straight, a small, satisfied smile on his weathered face. Sophia watched, her reporter's notebook forgotten, simply bearing witness. The Secretary of Defense spoke of honor, duty, and the resilience of truth. But the real ceremony was in the silence that followed. "Sergeant Ward, resume your post." The command rang out. Elijah executed a perfect about-face. He took his position before the tomb. The rifle felt like an extension of his own body. He took the first step. Click. Then another. Click.
The sound echoed in the hushed silence, a metronome of restored order. 21 steps. Turn. 21 steps. Each movement was a testament to perseverance, a silent rebuke to corruption, a promise kept to the unknown soldier and to himself. He was no longer just a soldier standing watch. He was a symbol, a living testament that some things are unbreakable: honor, truth, and the promise that those who give their all for their country will never, ever be forgotten. The sun climbed higher, warming the marble and glinting off his medals. Sergeant Elijah Ward kept his watch, silent and unbroken, his shadow stretching long and sure across the sacred ground he had sworn to protect.